So I titled this little blurb, Associations and Relationships. So I'm going to just give you a quick overview of what I mean by that, and then I'm going to ask you if you can do an inventory of your own relationships and see which ones the association that you have is impacting your most important relationships. It's impacting your whole life. It impacts your level of success, the level of fulfillment that we have in our lives. And most of that comes from money, people, relationships, a certain level of success or achievement, all show up as like fulfillment in our lives. What happens if you have associations that are impacting all of those things negatively? Now, what do I mean by that? In many success books and leadership books, you'll read that, you are the average of the 5 people that you hang around with the most. And that if you did a little computation in terms of income, like what is the income of the 5 people you hang around with most, you take the average of that, and that would be reflected in your own income. Let's take that now to relationships. You are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. Now, here's the thing. What if some of those people that you're hanging around with the most are by default? What if it's through work or through work activities, and you're partnered up with someone who's running around on their spouse or their partner, dating a bunch of guys or a bunch of gals all at the same time, and none of the people that he or she are dating even know that they're part of a polygamous kind of activity? Well, you're around that all the time. When you associate with media like what TV shows do you watch? What movies do you watch? What do you listen to? What do you listen to in terms of podcasts? What do you listen to in terms of audio inputs or video inputs? What are you watching? What are you listening to? That stuff all shows up. You start to associate and get into some reality shows, and those people almost become part of, like, they're real, like they're part of your life. And when she steps out on her husband, right, it opens the door mentally for you stepping out on yours. Now, someone told me once they said, Jeannie, it's not that simplistic. And I said, oh, but it is. Oh, but it is. You can actually look at culture and how culture, that would be a whole sociological evaluation of how social media of the past, 20, 30 years has impacted and led to the culture that we experience today. What were the influencers back then? And you look every 10 years and you look at the programming, the programming on television and the programming on the radio and the programming on social media, what you're constantly inundated with, right? That's having an influence. So what leaders do is they select to turn certain things off. They look at, is this something I really want to let into my psyche? And they actually evaluate, and they have a filter. And if you might go to a movie and it's rated PG-13 or it's rated R, it's rated PG. Leaders, guess what? They have their own filter and their own rating, and they decide what goes in and what doesn't. Now, you might be watching this and you could say, I don't really consider myself a leader. Well, somebody has to lead. You might end up being a reluctant leader, but somebody is leading. So if you're in a relationship and it's not going well and the D word is being thrown around, right? Like it's some dramatic statement, oh, maybe we should look at divorce or something. You don't want to throw those words around, because the impact of that is that it whittles away at the backbone. It whittles away at the very integrity of the relationship that you valued so much that you committed to spending your life with this person. I would actually ask you to step back. Look at the associations of the people that you work with. Look at your social associations. This is something that I've had to do over the years, and mostly on the recommendation of mentors that I have had and books I have read. And what I found was the more I limited, now you might say, well, I have really negative family members, but they're my family. And I would say to you, absolutely. But now you learn to set up some gentle boundaries. You learn to be proactive in those boundaries and deciding how much of that am I equipped to letting in to my world without it negatively impacting it. And that's a muscle. I believe that setting boundaries is almost a muscle that we develop over time. The people that I work with, they get pretty good at that. They do. They get pretty good at setting boundaries. And many of them write me, months, years later, citing that particular activity of finding where you need boundaries set. What are they'll say that was like a huge part of their success in their turnaround of their relationship, or in their finding of a partner that they went on to marry, or they're spending their life with. These are really important principles that I'm sharing here. And the power of association, do not underestimate it. I would say if you want a happy marriage that's happy 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 years, if you want that, if that's something that's inside of your heart of hearts, you've got to hang around with people who are achieving that ahead of where you're at. You always want to be hooking your wagon to a star that's shining pretty brightly. So the power of association, I'm just telling you, if all you do is associate with people who complain about their spouses, or complain about their partner or their boyfriend or their kids or whatever it is, then your integrity, if you allow that, your integrity is weakened. So you have to learn how, and that's with people skills that we learn, how to set up boundaries of protection for us so that we don't sacrifice what we really want because we get caught up in the energy and the velocity of a downward spiral that's happening in someone else's life around us. Or maybe you might step back and say, man, about everybody that I'm connected to now is like going through a divorce. I mean, it's pretty much epidemic now. It really is. So it's not surprising when people tell me that. I will tell you, reach out. Reach out to people who have what I call the fruit on the tree, and start associating with people who have what you want. And I'll tell you, that's one of the powers, that's one of the values of being connected to a coach or mentor, because the person that you're connecting to will not only help you to rise in your expectations and your results, but they'll expect you to rise. They'll provide the guidance, and they'll also provide the inspiration by being connected to them. Pardon my dogs for barking. This was a quick live stream, and I didn't close the door.